Metal Gear Solid is arguably one of the greatest games ever made, and one that just about everybody has played or heard of. Its sleek new look with 3D generated models and its enormous world made for an experience that no one expected a game to give them. This being Mike's favorite game as a kid, and my first time playing it, it's going to be a good test to see if it holds up for him, and if I can enjoy it today. Let's see how well time has treated this game. Metal Gear Solid is the third game in the Metal Gear series, but the fourth to be released featuring Snake. This is due to a game called Snake's Revenge that was released on the NES in 1990, 3 years after the original Metal Gear. Although Snake's Revenge involved the same main character and follows the storyline to what happened after the original Metal Gear, this game never had any involvement from Kojima and was never made part of the series canon. Because of this, Kojima wanted to originally call Metal Gear Solid Metal Gear 3. However, he changed the name when he realized that the original game wasn't very well known in America. This was because the MSX2 wasn't sold in the States, and all we had was the version we started this season with off for the NES. Development started in 1995, a year after Policenauts was released. In the early stages of development, the team wanted to make, quote, the best PlayStation game ever. In order to accomplish this, they made the game as accurate and realistic as possible while keeping it enjoyable and tense. The team was educated on weapons, explosives, and vehicles by the Huntington Beach SWAT team. Their technical advisor, Motosada Mori, even visited Fort Irwin for training, along with firing weapons at a local gun rental store. To add to the realism, the team also went back through and adjusted every detail of the game to make objects unique from one another. Kojima was quoted as saying, "If the player isn't tricked into believing the world is real, then there's no point in making the game." And it's safe to say that the development team really put in as much research and effort as they possibly could into the game. In 1998, only 3 years after development started, a playable demo was released to the public. According to IGN, this demo, quote, had more gameplay in it than most finished titles. In the same year, the full game was released and was met with nothing but positive feedback. As we're waiting for the main menu to appear, we hear a very distinct song that is simple, yet very catchy. If you remember in our Policenauts video, we mentioned that this was the theme from that game. After all the title cards are finished, we're then put into a cutscene right away to explain your mission and the bosses you'll be encountering. This cutscene also instantly shows off the highly detailed graphics of the game. When finally making it to the main menu, you're greeted with the standard push start prompt, which leads to the standard options of games for the PlayStation. Some additional options you can choose from are VR training, which is like a time attack mode for completing an obstacle course littered with enemies, briefing, which shows a cutscene between the Colonel and Snake that repeats the information you learned during the beginning cutscene. However, once you get past the information you already know, you're flooded with so much backstory about yourself and the other characters that we can't possibly fit into this video. And Special, which lets you view the events of the previous Metal Gear game. Upon hitting New Game, we see a very brief cutscene that's a continuation of the first cutscene in the game. This brings us into an underground facility where we are shown credits while trying to make our way to the elevator. Although technically the first level in the game, this acts as a very good introduction to the game and how you'll be moving about on the levels to come. The story of this game takes place after the original Metal Gear, but before Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. As we learned with the first game, we killed Big Boss and blew up Outer Heaven. So what more could we possibly do? Actually, there's quite a lot that happened since your shenanigans in the jungle. A renegade special forces unit of Foxhound takes over an island in Alaska and threatens to use a new Metal Gear weapon to attack the US, unless they get the remains of Big Boss back, along with $1 billion. Considering this game takes place only 5 years after the first game, they really built a new Metal Gear weapon quickly after we destroyed the first one. We report to a guy named Colonel Campbell, who gives us information about our surroundings or what we need to do next. Alongside the Colonel, we occasionally talk to Naomi Hunter, who provides medical advice, Natasha Romanenko, who provides item and weapon tips, Master Miller, who is a survival coach, and Mei Ling, who lets you save your progress. Our mission is pretty simple. Save the DARPA chief and the president of ArmsTech, and then find out whether or not the terrorists can follow through with their threats. If they're able to, then it's up to us to stop it. You find the DARPA chief surprisingly quickly, and he informs you that Metal Gear can be turned off with a special detonation override code. After conveniently giving us all the information we need, he dies of a heart attack. After escaping the jail cell where you found him, you meet Meryl Silverberg, who's the Colonel's niece. Right away, you can see that this is the same girl from Policenauts, name and all. Even in Policenauts, she states that she used to be a part of Foxhound until it got disbanded. This makes us feel like these games somehow take place in the same universe. Shortly after all of this, you run into your first boss, Revolver Ocelot. Within the same room as you tied to explosives is the president of ArmsTech. While in the middle of your fight with Ocelot, a cyborg appears out of nowhere and chops off Ocelot's hand. This cyborg then cuts the Armstech president free. We are then greeted to another cutscene where the Armstech president informs us that Meryl has the second card needed to deactivate Metal Gear. And just like the DARPA chief, the instant we get the information we need, the guy dies of a heart attack. At this point you would think to yourself, well, I completed the first objective pretty quickly, so now all I need to do is find this Metal Gear weapon. Shouldn't be so bad, right?
Oh, wrong.
The entire rest of the game revolves around you making it to Metal Gear. After running around the map figuring out where you need to go, and backtracking to pick up special weapons, as well as fighting a bunch of great bosses, you finally make it to Metal Gear, where you input the deactivation codes. This actually does the opposite, and Metal Gear is activated and ready for use. Liquid Snake, your twin brother and leader of the terrorists, jumps into Metal Gear and the final boss fight begins. When the mech is just about dead, the cyborg from earlier shows up again and talks to you. We find out that this is Gray Fox, the man we were tasked to find in the first game. He helps us out by attacking Metal Gear, but ends up dying. When all is said and done, we have a fist fight with Liquid on the top of Metal Gear, except this time a bomb is planted with a timer. Once you defeat Liquid, you have to find an escape vehicle to leave the facility. Upon leaving, we are chased by none other than Liquid. He chases you through a tunnel system, and you finally make it out of the building where both vehicles crash. A cutscene shows Liquid emerge from the wreckage and walk over to kill Snake, only to die from a heart attack. At this point we're done playing and it's all about watching the rest of the cutscenes. Either Meryl or Otacon, a scientist that Snake rescues early on in the game, will come up to you and exchange a bit of dialogue before the two of you drive off on a snowmobile. Which ending you get is based on the outcome of the torture level. If you sit through all the credits, you are greeted with an audio message between Ocelot and the President of the United States. It turns out that Ocelot was a double agent and was just trying to get the disc off of the Armstech president. As soon as you jump into the game, you'll instantly see that everything isn't as smooth as you remember. This is kind of expected though whenever you play older 3D games. They don't hold up as much as the 2D games of the Super Nintendo era. Aside from the blocky models, everything is very impressive from the instant you start to move around. Every character has a unique look to them with the exception of the guards, and you can tell that they really try to make every room, building, and outside environment as unique as they possibly could. Conceptual artist Yoji Shinkawa has said that Solid Snake's model was based on the body of Jean-Claude Van Damme and the face of Christopher Walken. That's a very odd combination of people, especially one that is supposed to be infiltrating a huge terrorist organization. It's also interesting how their mouths don't move when they talk. While playing the game, Mike even commented that he never noticed it as a kid. Aside from graphics, the music is beyond impressive. Kojima originally wanted, quote, a full orchestra right next to the player, which would modify the tempo and texture to the currently playing track to make it different depending on what you were doing. But the technology just wasn't there yet. Regardless, every aspect of the music fits wonderfully with the game, and is even an amazing soundtrack to purchase and listen to on your own time. The voiceovers for this game are also top-notch. It's very clear that they didn't slack on any of the steps of this process and made sure everything was as amazing as it could possibly be. The sound effects were also a huge upgrade from previous Metal Gear games. Although strangling an enemy causes a strange sound, everything seems spot on and nothing really seems out of place. After playing the first Metal Gear, there's not really much of a difference with this game in terms of mechanics. You still need specific keycards to get you into specific doors, and you pretty much just go from one boss to the next while trying to find your way through the map. The biggest difference between these games is the cutscenes, and boy are there a lot of them. After you complete your first objective fairly early on in the game, the rest of your adventure is spent taking out bosses, backtracking, and sitting through very long cutscenes. The cutscenes provide a lot of information to the story and make sure you know what's going on without any questions. These often feel like that they're never going to end though. You can always skip the cutscenes if you don't feel like waiting, but doing so will leave you trying to figure out what's actually going on. Some reviewers have also said that it's like watching a movie as much as it is playing a game, which is the style that Kojima typically uses when making games. Another huge improvement is switching between items. Although it's still a little bit of a pain, it's nothing compared to what the first game made you go through. Which brings up a good point. Metal Gear Solid pretty much has the story and events that the original Metal Gear was supposed to have. It's almost as if this was Kojima's way of redeeming that first game and making sure that anyone who played the US version of Metal Gear would love the new improvements. Metal Gear Solid also provided a first in terms of utilizing the console's controller ports. During the fight with Psycho Mantis, if your controller is in the first player port as it should be, Mantis will be able to change your screen and see which way you're aiming. Switching your controller to the second port makes it so that Mantis can't read what you're doing and makes the fight a lot easier. There's also a moment in the game where you need to call Meryl, yet no one told you what her frequency was. They hint for you to look on the back of your CD case where you'll find a conversation with Meryl taking place and her codec frequency is clearly visible. These two things, although very simple, add a whole new layer to the game that players never got to experience before. And it's also because of these things that the game has received several awards. Metal Gear Solid brings the series to a whole new level and provides countless hours of entertainment. And we're quite aware that there's a lot of information missing from this video. Quite frankly, there's so much going on in this game that we would have an insanely long video just to talk about it all. So instead we made the decision to cover just the main bullet points and get the basic information out there. If you've never played this game, then it's highly recommended that you play through it just for the story. The amount of replayability in this game is more than most modern games. Even though the cutscenes feel like they're dragging on a little too long, this game was meant to last you a while and not be absorbed in just one day. And it's because of the amount of content and innovation in this game that we say it holds up and is honestly one of the best games ever made.